mode.
Good afternoon. I'm Terry Okoro. As chair of the APM Women in Project Management SIG, I'm delighted that you've joined WiPM's 21st anniversary webinar, Stepping Up a Gear in Your Career. In this interactive webinar on the registered project professional and fellow of the association, our intention is that you engage with the presenters through polls as well as a question and answer session after the presentations. Questions can be submitted at any time during the webinar. The background to this webinar is that there are too few women in project management stepping up to get their skills and experience formally recognized. Since the APM Registered Project Professional Standard was first awarded 4 years ago in March 2010, almost 500 successful candidates have achieved RPP status and joined the public register. However, of those, only just over 30, which is less than 7%, are women. More pertinent, though, is that whilst the numbers of successful applicants has climbed steadily since the launch, the number of successful women joining the register is declining, 15 in 2011, 9 in 2012, and only 8 in 2013. Women are similarly underrepresented as honorary fellows and fellows of the association. Yet the proportion of female membership of the APM has risen dramatically since very few members in 1993 and up to 3,300 members, which is 16% today. During the special anniversary year, the WiPM SIG aims to redress the underrepresentation of women in these two areas through firstly raising awareness, secondly providing the necessary information to assist decision making, and finally providing support during the application process if required. Both presenters today have extensive first-hand experience of the application and assessment process for both RPP and FAPM, which all participants today, both women and men, will benefit hugely from. The first speaker is Dr. Brendan De Cruz. He is currently the lead verifier and assessor for RPP. He has oversight of the quality assurance and enhancement processes that underpin the RPP designation. He is also chair of APM's Education Network Advisory Group and involved with a number of the APM's initiatives relating to the professional standards and knowledge. Brendan.
Thank you, Terry. Let me talk a little bit now, please, about RPP. RPP is APM's Registered Project Professional, and it's billed as the standard for extraordinary project professionals. What I'd like to do on this first slide is to talk about why RPP might be for you. It's aligned with APM's application for chartered status, and those of you who've been following the APM website will know that a public announcement went out very recently. And as Terry said, we are now actually over 500 RPPs on the register, some of whom have come through other routes such as CPM, FAPM, and the IPMA levels A and B. And we do have a number of corporate variants who work with APM to deliver these, such as Shell. The most important thing to remember here is that RPP is a designation, not a qualification. It's not something that you study for. It's something that is competence-based, and you need to demonstrate your competence through evidence. It's gender neutral because when you submit your portfolio, unless you make it obvious in terms of the language and the things that you write, it will be completely oblivious to the assessor whether you're male or female. And it's domain independent. It doesn't matter whether you work in technology or engineering or social projects. All of them are perfectly relevant in terms of the opportunities to demonstrate that you are a registered project professional. There are 3 key assessment stages, and it should take typically around 3 months, but it all depends very much on each stage and your availability to attend the professional review stage, which is towards the latter part of the process. I'm now going to take you through those 3 key stages. The initial review stage is once you've submitted your documentation, APM will go through the initial review and will evaluate whether or not it's fit for purpose. I haven't got, unfortunately, time to take you through more than a little bit of what's required of you, but there is very detailed candidate guidance available on the APM website. One of the things you're required to submit is a project track record, which will demonstrate your experience of managing complex projects successfully during the last 8 years. We needed a window to demonstrate recency, and after much discussion we decided that most project managers should have experience of managing projects within the last 8 years. You also need to demonstrate that you have managed others whilst demonstrating the various competence for which you need to provide evidence. This, if you like, is your acid test, because if you haven't been able to manage complex projects and manage others, then perhaps you're not quite ready to submit for the RPP standard. You'll also be given the opportunity to detail your qualifications, your certifications, and your professional standing. We recognize that many people are members of other professional bodies, and that's perfectly appropriate in terms of trying to demonstrate your project management and your project professionalism. You'll also be required to submit a CPD log, which must show at least 35 hours within the last 12 months of your submission. And the key point to remember here is that it's not just saying what you did, but showing how it's added value. So there are sections for you to put in some reflective statements demonstrating how it's actually added value to you. And you'll need to provide 2 supporting referees who can verify the accuracy of the evidence that you've put into your portfolio. You'll be making some claims about complexity of projects and the type of work that you've been doing, and what's needed is 2 referees who can say, yep, that's genuine, that's appropriate. If you get through the initial review stage, and there's no reason to think that you won't, your portfolio will be sent to the portfolio assessment stage, where a trained RPP assessor will look at the portfolio and give you a score, if you like, based on a number of criteria. This process could take anything up to 6 weeks depending on whether or not quality assurance processes kick in. Typically we try and get the assessors to do it as quickly as possible so that we can give candidates feedback, but we allow up to 6 weeks to make sure that checks and balances are all in order. The evidence that you present in your portfolio should be linked to the competence statements that are required, and I'll take you through those in a second, but also must be linked to your project track record. So these are not just saying, I have this competence, but also how you demonstrated those competence in the projects that you've included in your project track record. The key thing to remember here is that it's not a description of the projects, it's about your contribution to those projects. So what we want to see is I rather than we. We understand that team working is really important, but the key thing to recognize here is it's an individual competence assessment that we're looking for. So you need to articulate your particular involvement. And we advocate the use of the STAR method, which some of you may know about, which is about situation, task, action, and results. And if you like, the action and the results are what we're most interested in, because this is where you link it to your project track record and the types of projects that you've been doing. Within the competence statements themselves, there are 2 mandatory competencies, and these are leadership and professionalism and ethics. For those of you who've looked at the competence framework, you'll understand that there are a number of indicators there that give you an idea of the sorts of things that you need to provide as evidence. For those of you who haven't looked at the competence framework, this is a must-read, because the basis for the RPP standard is pretty much the competence framework. A bit of a health warning here in that the competence framework is changing, and that at some point in the future we will obviously realign to the new competence framework, but at this moment in time there are 27 complementary competencies and there are a number of what we describe as supplementary competencies. It's the complementary competencies that are particularly important to you because each one gives you around 250 words to articulate your evidence and apply that to the projects that you've been successfully delivering. At the end of the portfolio review, there will either be feedback to the next stage assessors, and the only feedback that you will get is that you've been successful and you'll be invited to a professional review. If unfortunately you've been unsuccessful, you'll be given detailed feedback from the assessor showing where the deficiencies are and hopefully giving you guidance to encourage you to resubmit. The professional review stage happens monthly at a number of different locations, and I'll say that this is sort of picking up now. We're getting a lot more popularity in terms of the number of streams that we offer at each of these professional reviews, and it very much depends on your availability and your location and how it meets your timescales. The professional review itself will be taken by 2 qualified RPP assessors, and it should take no more than 1 hour. At the beginning of the professional review, you'll be given the opportunity to give a talk, which is 10 minutes, and typically what candidates have used is a discussion around the 5 dimensions of professionalism, and many people choose to talk about why they meet the RPP standard. The key thing that we want you to think about here is that presentation skills are varied, and so we haven't called this a presentation, we've called it a talk, and we've left that open to individual candidates to decide how they best want to convey their particular attributes within the 10 minutes that they have available to them. This will be followed up by a number of questions around the mandatory and selected other competencies, which were obviously picked up at the portfolio assessment stage, and the professional reviewers will use their own discretion based on the documentation that's available to them. And this hopefully will allow them to drill down to any concerns or issues about the evidence presented and whether or not the candidate in front of them is of the required standard. A recommendation will then be made to APM, and feedback will be provided to the candidate typically between 2 and 4 weeks. And if successful, the RPP designate, because you'll no longer be a candidate, will be able to join the register of project professionals if you so choose. As Terry said at the beginning, we'd obviously like to encourage people to aspire to meet the RPP standard, and there are a number of different routes. Carol will now talk about the FAPM particular possibility and how that might help you to kind of take the next step into professional review. I'll now hand back to Terry to continue with this webinar.
Thank you, Brendan, for that informative presentation. We're fortunate to have another high-caliber speaker, Carol Bell, RPP, FAPM. She's a recognized leading project management professional, participant in the development of APM's RPP standard, as well as the Body of Knowledge 6th edition. She's also been voted by APM as one of the 10 most influential UK project managers. Carol is also an RPP assessor and RPP champion. She mentors RPP candidates within her organization. She's also former chair of Women in Project Management SIG. Carol's role now is to encourage women to develop their careers and to aspire to reach the highest echelons of the profession. Carol.
Hello everybody, and thank you all for joining this webinar. My role as a past chairman of Women in Project Management, I feel it's part of my role to encourage women as much as possible to gain recognition for the work that we do as project managers. That's the same for everybody, but particularly for women, because we tend to be underrepresented at the higher levels, and one of the reasons is because there is a perception that we don't put ourselves forward, we don't apply for the higher qualifications and the greater levels of recognition. So my talk today is about the FAPM route, which can actually, as well as being a way of demonstrating your additional commitment to project management, can also be an entry route for a shorter route to the RPP qualification. So why should candidates step up to FAPM? Why is it better than just going for an APM and staying as a MAPM and not going forward? It's because there is recognition that fellowship is the highest level of professional membership. As Brendan says, the RPP is a standard, it's a designation. It isn't a qualification. Neither is FAPM, but fellowship of any professional body is recognised as being a higher award than straightforward membership. Having fellowship gains recognition from your peers because it is clear that your achievements have been recognised by your professional body. And for me, most importantly, by having FAPM, I'm recognised as being a role model to others, and I want more people to join me in being a role model for those who are coming along behind us. So, these are the questions that you would wish to answer. The definition of substantial achievement is of course subjective, but it could be to do with the sorts of projects that you worked on and how complex they are, how valuable to just the profession and to the wider public. For instance, having worked on the Olympics, for instance, or the Crossrail project, or the Channel Tunnel project, even work on a project which isn't finished yet, like Crossrail, the High Speed 2 would also count towards it. Significant contribution to a broad area of professional work. This could be presenting at events like this one, at conferences or seminars. It could be having a particular skill which you use in the wider project management community, like one of our colleagues in Women in Project Management who does a lot of work in training people to have better communication skills. Or it could be how your work has influenced the project management community. That could be in the form of important research or development of that kind. That can particularly apply to people who work in the academic field, not just as project management practitioners. So once you've submitted your application and it has been validated by the membership department, it goes forward to a membership panel which meets on a regular basis. And they are looking for the evidence that you have, you are and continue to develop the competencies required for fellowship. So of course they will be looking at how you have developed over time and also how you have enhanced your skills within your professional activity. They'll look at how you contributed to the growth of the profession. For example, as Terry said, I have helped with the body of knowledge. I'm working on the competence framework, one of many of course, and I have acted as a guinea pig trialling the new qualifications as APM brings them in. So the membership panel will analyse your personal contribution as you have put it down in your portfolio. And finally, it could be that you have developed existing skills and applied new skills, and we will of course be looking to see that you are going to continue to develop professionally and contribute towards the life of the APM as a profession. So, evidence that's valid. Unlike the RPP, where the types of evidence are based on the competence framework, a wide variety of evidence is available to you to select from based on your career to date. And it's for you to decide how the experience that you have fits into these various criteria. Oh, and by the way, published material can also include things like articles in Project Network, in-house magazines, etc. We don't expect it all to be of full research at university level caliber. So, how do you apply? In a similar manner to the RPP, but rather less rigidly, you prepare a portfolio of evidence. It includes an application form, a project-based CV, and then the additional information that you submit is up to you. And most importantly, a personal statement why you intend to apply, and 2 letters of support from people within APM, possibly outside APM if you're applying as an outside candidate, indicating why you are a fit and proper person to become a fellow. Now, of course, if you don't have somebody who's a FAPM to support your application, you can actually ask other people as well to issue letters of support. In fact, the application requires 2 letters of support, but when I made my application, I did actually include an additional letter from people that I'd worked with at APM HQ, so that there was evidence of the work which I'd done in various capacities at APM. So, how do you start, or where do you start? You can download the guidance and the application form from the APM website. And I would very strongly suggest that you discuss the application with the membership department before you apply. Once you've done that, you can prepare and submit your portfolio. You might once again wish to discuss with somebody else who already has FAPM or senior manager within your organisation before you actually put your portfolio in. But once in, it will be sent forward to the membership department, who will assess it, and there is no automatic professional review which occurs on the FAPM application, but if might be considered borderline, they will either have it externally assessed or invite you in for a review where your experience can be discussed. After that, it will be sent to the membership panel for further consideration. And if your application is unsuccessful, like with RPP, we will give you guidance on how to reapply. So if you think that you haven't got the necessary experience or attributes yet, then I would highly recommend that by participation, active participation within branch and or SIG and APM development activities, you are likely to gain the experience that you would need for putting yourself forward for FAPM. And as I'm also an awards judge, I can highly recommend submitting your project or program for the APM awards. So finally, if you know you are great at what you do, and it is recognised that women are less likely than men to believe in themselves that they are great at what they do, so it's worth finding out from other people whether they think you're great at what you do. If you want to seek recognition of your achievements, and particularly valuably, the FAPM offers a faster track route to RPP, and I can highly recommend, I'm sure there are women listening to this who are eligible, and I can highly recommend that you apply. So I'd like to hand back now to Terry so that we can take the discussion forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carol, for that presentation. Hopefully people have a better idea now on what to do. We'll now move to a question and answer session.
Okay, thank you. Joe Wilkinson has asked, how does this apply to people who have experience in portfolio, program and project offices and assurance roles such as risk and benefits management?
If I can start there, the registered project professional is about professionalism across the project management areas, which includes program management and portfolio management. So therefore, it's been designed to look at a set of core competencies, if you like, that are applicable across all of those different roles. Clearly, those involved in program management and portfolio management, or those who specialize in areas such as benefits and risks, will need to be able to articulate how they meet those core competencies. And in some cases, it could be by engaging and managing others in the delivery of those. We realize that it's going to be a challenge, but we found that there are a large number of program managers and portfolio specialists who have achieved the RPP standard, but have just had to give a little bit more thought about the recency of their project management experience and how they articulate that evidence. Carol, any thoughts on this?
Brendan, I absolutely agree with what you're saying. As somebody who is an assessor of RPP candidates, I have seen through the portfolios that have been sent to me clear evidence of people who are managing portfolios and programs and who are just as capable of demonstrating the evidence required as people who are straightforward project managers. And in fact, of course, it's worth bearing in mind that the reason it's called a registered project professional as opposed to registered project manager is precisely so that it recognises all of the different types of project management that there are, including portfolios, project support office, programs, etc.
Okay, we'll take another question now. Anna?
Thank you. Moira wants to know the answer to this. 35 hours affects parents who will have to give up important family time to collect these hours unless they have a sympathetic employer. This is more likely to affect women than men.
Okay, I'm probably in one way not the best example, because it's important to recognise that 35 hours of professional development doesn't just mean going on courses. There are many different types of activity which you can do in order to count your 35 hours. Attending this webinar is one of them, and we hope that by doing so at lunchtime we can demonstrate that it can be done during the working day. Also, new skills that you acquire during your work experience will count towards your CPD. Reading can count towards one CPD. What I want to get across is it does not necessarily mean attending evening seminars or events which are run by the APM. It is far, far wider than that, and there is information in the application documents explaining all the different types of CPD which are relevant. Thanks.
If I can chip in there, I mean, the most important thing is that you actually reflect on the activities that you've done and show those, how those have actually benefited your career. And you know, clearly it depends very much on your job role or the types of activities that you get involved in. And as Carol said, this particular webinar is already contributing to your CPD, and one of the 5 dimensions is commitment to CPD. Okay, we'll move on to another question, please, Anna.
Thank you, Brendan. Greg Midlane has asked this question. I'm now based in South Africa. Does the professional review have to be done in person, or would video conferencing be acceptable?
Excellent question. Currently, as things stand, we have trialed the use of video conferencing and similar technologies, and our current position is that we only offer physical opportunities for professional reviews. However, we are working with corporates such as Shell, and we believe that there is no reason why we couldn't use video conferencing capability, providing that we can ensure the environment in which this takes place is appropriate. I can't give you any definitive answers right now, but it's certainly something to raise as part of your portfolio submission, and I'm sure APM will do everything possible to try and arrange an appropriate opportunity for you to undertake a professional review using whatever technology is available to you. Next question, please, Anna.
Thank you. Caroline asks, does obtaining RPP offer a fast-track route to FAPM?
I'll take that one. I don't necessarily believe that it does, although it does show that you are committed to your career. So it does answer one of the key criteria on which FAPM is actually judged. However, the opposite is true. Applying and being successful in your application for FAPM does shorten the route to RPP, and Brendan could perhaps give us brief details of how the difference between the FAPM route to RPP and the traditional route.
Thank you, Carol. Yes, what it means is that the portfolio that you would submit would be significantly abridged compared to your standard RPP application. And the portfolio assessment would focus more on the mandatory competencies than the complementary competencies. You'd still have to do a professional review, and all of the competencies would be open for assessment depending on what areas the professional review assessors focused on. But it does mean that you don't need to put in as much effort on producing your portfolio, because there is already recognition through FAPM that you have a good understanding of the project management environment. We'll move on to another question now, please, Anna.
Thank you. This is a question for Carol from Patrick Brosnan, and Patrick says, Carol, did you say that you have to be a member of APM for 5 years? What if you don't have this or another member of a professional group? Can I still fast track?
Unfortunately, no, not on FAPM, but even for RPP, there is a recognition that you have to do a certain amount of work to actually have gained the experience to meet the requirements for the necessary core and complementary competencies. Even if you have taken the APM practitioner qualification or the APMP, which are seen as evidence of the more complementary competencies, there is a minimum standard that you have to achieve both for RPP and for FAPM, and it is unlikely, although possible, that one would have achieved that unless one had 5 years of post-qualification experience. However, if you feel that you might qualify on that basis, I would highly suggest that you speak to the membership department and seek advice from them.
Okay, Anna will now read out another question about RPP, please.
Thank you. Eleanor asks, the RPP is a right route for those working on complex and multidisciplinary projects, which is not my case, at least for the time being. Am I right in thinking that the APM PQ is my case, is the right level of qualification?
That's an excellent question, Elena. Yes, you are effectively, because the RPP designation, if you like, applies to those operating at levels B and A in the IPMA hierarchy. For those of you who are still practitioners but don't have the requisite experience of the competencies or the complexity of the projects, the PQ as was is the appropriate qualification. Currently, APM are refreshing all of their qualifications, and there will be a new product in at the level C, if you like, which will replace PQ. I can't give you any details about that because the launch is due sometimes toward the end of this year, but you know, there are products within the APM suite which will help you along the ladder towards attaining the RPP designation. If we move on now to another question, please, Anna.
Thank you. Bethendale asks, in regards to RPP, how many years experience are required for the submission? Also, the project track record, is there a template for this on the APM website?
Okay, I'll fill that first, but I think Carol may want to chip in here. There isn't sort of a maximum number of years, but we feel it's highly unlikely that people that don't have 5 years of experience are operating at the right level, and certainly within the requirements for IPMA, you need to demonstrate that you've worked for at least 5 years within the project management environment. What we're looking at is a window of 8 years, if you like, to demonstrate the criteria that we want for the registered project professional, which is complexity of projects, which is demonstrating the evidence in accordance with the competencies and the competence indicators, and that you've managed others within that environment. We do have a number of people who have, if you like, been promoted or moved into roles around program management, portfolio management, whose recency of project management experience isn't quite the same, but we do allow evidence over a much longer period if you've been, for example, working for 20, 30 years, providing you can demonstrate that you've got the requisite competence within the last 8 years. Some of the evidence can be derived from more older projects, if you like. Carol, do you have any views here?
Yes, I have to agree with what you've just said, Brendan. It's important to recognise that if you are in perhaps a senior line management role, you might not have the level of active involvement in complex projects, but then you are able to say that you are managing others who are carrying out those complex, those duties on complex projects and demonstrating the necessary competencies. And as you say, it is possible to lengthen and widen your experience so that you are bringing in from a broad number of projects. The application form allows you to go up to 6 projects, and I think you can indeed increase that too if you need to have lots of different projects in order to demonstrate your experience across more of the competencies. I haven't yet found that the people who are applying, whose portfolios I have reviewed, that the reason why they are unsuccessful, if they are, is because they haven't got sufficient experience. It's generally to do with how well they put that experience across within their portfolio. So back to you, Brendan.
Okay, we'd like to move on to another question, please, Anna.
With regard to managing others in RPP, does this include stakeholders, client teams and suppliers?
Yes, it's very difficult to articulate what we mean by managing others other than sort of going through the guidance that's provided to candidates. Effectively, we accept that you're not going to be line managing these people directly, but you will be coordinating their work or liaising, and perhaps engaging others is the better word for some of the competencies. The key issue here is that people manage projects, and in order to get and to deliver the things that need to be done, you need to interact with others, and you need to be able to articulate within your evidence how you've gone about doing that. For example, a business case, you are highly unlikely to have been sat in a silo to produce a business case without engaging with stakeholders and ascertaining sort of what priorities and the various requirements are. So you need to show, when you demonstrate that competence, when you write your evidence for it, how you've gone about doing that. And that would apply across the board in terms of the competencies that are there. I'm sure that once you actually sit down and start to write these things, it becomes a lot more apparent how you've done that. But we are looking for, if you like, managing others as a broader concept. Carol, any comments here?
All I will say again is that it's very rare for somebody's portfolio not to demonstrate that they have managed others, because, as you say, Brendan, if you're working on complex projects, you won't be doing these tasks by yourself. You'll almost certainly be working with people within other departments within your organisation, and often, frequently, with people who are actually working for different organisations to your own. And of course, that's where it's the ability to demonstrate effective leadership comes in, because if you are having to manage people who are not part of your line management team, of course, one of the things you cannot say is, please do this because I say so. So it really does demonstrate your ability as a manager to have effective and responsible leadership and to show professionalism, which are, of course, the 2 core competencies which we are seeking to assess when we look at your portfolio.
Are there any particular advantages of FAPM route to RPP? Are employers asking for RPP qualified project management staff, and is the wider market wanting such qualification?
Thank you, Miles. That's a really interesting question. Recently, I think Aras people did a survey that for the first time actually considered sort of what was required within the job market. And whilst RPP hasn't taken off in terms of consciousness within employers with respect to other products that are out there, such as Prince2, it is increasingly becoming something that employers are hoping that their staff will have, because it gives greater confidence in terms of people's ability to deliver. What APM would like ultimately is that the register of project professionals, which is out there on the website, employers can look at it, and it becomes something that will help them in terms of selecting the right candidates to deliver the sorts of complex projects that are available to them. We've been running this for 3 years, and we're getting a bit of momentum now. clearly chartered status would make a difference here. But my feeling is, having talked to some of the corporates that have come to APM and said, please work with us and help us to develop our staff, that there will be a lot of interest in having the RPP designation. But it's something that you work towards, and there are other qualifications within the APM suite that may be appropriate for people working in less complex project environments or in the earlier stages of their career. Carol, do you have any views here from your experiences?
I do, yes. APM as a profession is over 40 years old. Compared to professions like chartered architects or chartered surveyors, who also work within construction disciplines, it's a very young profession. But where no one would consider, for instance, employing an architect who wasn't a chartered architect, and similarly, the chartered surveyor designation is one which is recognized worldwide. I believe it's only a matter of time before the RPP, which is of course an equivalent qualification, it's an equivalent demonstration of capability and competence and professionalism, will be viewed by people outside the professions as being equivalent to the chartered architect, chartered engineer or chartered surveyor, or indeed chartered manager, the membership of the British Computer Society, their chartered membership. It's something where, if applying for a job and it lists a chartered professional status, I would say I have this qualification and it is seen as an equivalent.
What is the role of RPP champions? How are they organised? And how do I find my nearest?
The RPP champions were set up from the people who piloted the RPP standard when it was being introduced. So we have all ourselves been through the process and are therefore able to tell other people about it and to give an insight more than the words which are written on the APM website. So an RPP champion works with the branches and or the SIGs to be a conduit of information about RPP and to give as much help and support as they can, given the time available, to people who wish to apply. So effectively, the reason I'm here participating in this webinar today is in my role as RPP champion, in trying to encourage people to apply to see if they meet the standard and to raise the number of people who are actually achieving RPP standard. I do that by participating in a webinar like this one, or by attending events at the branch or with the SIG, so that I can talk about RPP to the people who are present, and they can come and ask me questions which they might not be able to find the answers to on the website. So there is actually a list of RPP champions on the website, which I believe by making inquiries to head office, you can be put in touch with your nearest or most appropriate RPP champion, so that you can contact them direct, and also of course the branch chairman contact us to ask us to attend events where they want to promote RPP.
Paul suggests that you're working in other roles such as portfolio management, but Brendan suggests that it is only really relating to their actual project management experience. Can you clarify if other role experience counts?
Yes, thank you, Joe. Apologies if that appears to be mixed messages, but we're very clear on this, in that it is project professional, and other roles do count. The most important thing is having a look at the competence framework and demonstrating the competencies for each of the various peripheral roles that are out there, such as portfolio management, program management, whatever the title that your employer uses. There will be a set of competencies that are universal across the project profession, if you like. And the key thing there is to look at what you do and be able to articulate those competencies. If you're a portfolio management professional and can do that, that's great, that's fine. Carol, any views here?
Yeah, only to endorse what you're saying, Brendan. When I joined APM, I had only just started in a role where the term project manager was in my title. But I would argue, and certainly the people who employed me took on the experience that I had gained in other roles, even though I have not been designated as a project manager. What I do now, I have a title of project manager, but I manage a portfolio and I manage a program, and I don't see them as being different. It's important to me and to, I hope, those people listening to recognise that what we are is project professionals, and what we do is manage projects or programs or portfolios or a combination of those in complex environments.